Hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we can't see that back corner, but nobody will be there.
Thing, for every goal they score in soccer, they get $20.
Oh, my
I
goodness.
don't know.
Well, first game, Sissy scored a goal, and Wyatt scored 2. So
She gonna be broke before she knows.
Sissy called us yesterday.
Sit down there, Tom. Let me see if I got this camera in the right spot.
Oh, you got it perfect. She called that. Said, Danny, you owe me $40 if I got 2 goals.
Jeff, you might wanna, those guys aren't here today, so. Let's see if we're looking at extra space.
I'll tell you,
Did Shower later or what? Smelling it. I just got no pneumonia, so I can't get nothing now.
yep, there he is.
Yeah, Bill Channel.
Oh, yeah, about that.
Good job.
Thank you. I was,
You see,
her away from her.
don't come too close.
Oh, okay. I heard
Morning,
you call.
yeah.
Ken Roselle suggested I might come by tonight. She confirmed with the proposal that I had made about the possible guest membership.
Something over there.
I thought they put footage.
Guest operator's license.
I think footers are already,
I didn't get real
I was actually intending on having that in the board meeting.
Okay, I can do that.
Can you do that instead,
Yeah, I
in the
can.
December board meeting?
Okay, yeah, he thought you might want to do that this evening, but if the board meeting,
There
that's
was 3
fine.
cold ones
See if we have
downstairs.
time at the end of the meeting.
We're something about water,
I can
right?
disappear and do it, that's fine, that'd be fine.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm good
Drinking
with that.
Coke.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, Paul. Hero?
Very sir.
Dude,
Well, he'll probably come over.
I guess we'll find
How
out.
about you?
Hi.
Good?
I'm good.
Then I can sit up there.
Well, you didn't sit back here if you wanted.
Huh?
How you doing?
Great.
Hey,
Ladies?
Hello. How you guys doing?
Good, and you? You sound like, you're not.
I've been better.
You got time or
Me
flu?
too. Motion to
How
adjourn.
long?
Second.
I said it.
I can't breathe on it.
Being as careful as I can.
Oh, man. Rough this time of year.
Got a fever?
Everybody here wants to come in one car.
No?
Take it too, because I don't want whatever that is.
We need to be in Florida.
You mean each car?
When you have that. But supposedly it works.
You like the pink lemonade or the watermelon?
Pink lemonade is probably the way
Very wise.
I know.
Don't worry about it.
Here, I'll share.
No, it's all right. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I mean, I think that helps.
I'm okay.
April might have some flavored stuff down.
Forgot my,
And then some of that.
He wants to stay till after January.
Hey, haircut.
I got them all.
I said, don't worry, I have a
It's
bunch
Roger.
of fashion to
Yeah.
fit my Clorox rings because
How are you?
not literally, of course, but I have been following her around all over.
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
Light switches and rings.
John, do you know Steve?
Schedule.
Steve.
I remember that talk.
I think he's on one of the new board members.
We had a meeting last week.
John,
Should
John,
be-
Steve.
I even got back there and said,
I'll get up.
you're supposed to
How you
send
doing?
me.
Pretty good.
Your last name?
We ain't
Yeah.
You know me, I'm gonna
I've seen you before. so.
Yeah,
I worked the front.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to have a meeting.
That's right there.
Everything goes into the slam. So that the board,
Mice.
that's
We'll
where,
have something for us to understand the direction.
I have a rundown of things we discussed last week, if you want me to go with that.
It doesn't have to be in this meeting, but for the board to
Sure,
have enough.
absolutely.
Right, because now that demolition is done,
No problem.
interested, we're gonna start getting questions.
Yeah.
Send Tom.
You're welcome. I was hoping you'd pull it in here.
I sure will.
He's not by the house.
I like watching her run over and run errands, so
There was some conversation we had.
she needs something to do.
She was busy this last week.
I know,
All those ladies.
she's had busy for 5 weeks, so
These are by tools.
between the baby and
Is that a new grandbaby we're talking about?
number 13.
Rebate.
Oh my goodness. 13 grandchildren?
Yeah, and 14's coming in December.
Oh my goodness.
But this one's been in the queue for, since October the 18th.
Cars, something like that, I just done.
Not a gift card.
Nope,
We got 7 o'clock,
Yeah,
everybody,
yeah.
please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Today is the November 25th Heritage Lake POA operations meeting. As a reminder, this meeting is what sets the budget for the December board meeting. I sound worse than usual, so hopefully we can get through this relatively quickly and fellow board members here can help pick up some of the conversation for me. So, had a couple late additions to the agenda, but we'll get through the regular agenda first and talk about those things last. First thing on the agenda is the 2020 budget and marina addendum. We voted in the November board meeting to pass the 2020 budget and marina addendum. Is there any further discussion you guys want to have on that now before we add it to the December board meeting? If not, Deborah, if we can add that as old business A. Second item on the agenda is the proposed modification of the existing POA rule for guest operator. It is on the agenda, Phil, I'm sorry. So Phil came to us a couple months ago and discussed the guest operator rule, which doesn't currently allow for those guest operators to have access to the common properties with their guests. So the guests of the guests, I guess. So that's something that he brought to the board's attention previously. We had a brief discussion of it, and at that time, I don't think we were in favor of it, but Phil's here and wanted another opportunity to have a discussion, so if you want to stand up, Phil, and give
I
us
can
another.
do that now or at the next board meeting, whatever is most
Now, let's
appropriate.
do it now, and then if we want to put it on the December board agenda, we can, if there's anything
Super.
for us to vote on, so. Why
Okay,
don't you give us a refresher of what the issue is?
refresher. What I'd presented to the board once before was the following statement, that a guest operator permit allows for the use of powerboats but not access to common grounds. My concern is that the lake is often the most crowded part of our community, while playgrounds, picnic areas, and beaches are less used and rarely crowded. Therefore, my suggestion is that a guest operator permit be renamed a guest membership that allows for previous privileges such as use of the lake, as well as the use of common areas. The qualifying people are already restricted to the extended family of owners, and this modification may even have the added benefit of directing such a guest toward the use of these facilities instead of just the use of the lake. I have the rule book in front of me with the various statements that are referred to that. On the revised version there on page 6. The people who are qualified to have a guest operator permit under the current rule are very well specified. And I'm trying to find that list here real quickly. It said that they would include any child, stepchild, ward, full-time student, is considered an eligible member under the current rules. And so one of the things that I wanted to refer to were some of the concerns that were apparently discussed that were presented to me in an email from Ken Roselle. He said the potential of it resulting in not just guest operators, but anyone with them, for example, 16-year-olds with a boat full of kids. But that doesn't seem to be a valid concern because 16-year-olds are already part of the families who would be here already. When I was here originally, both of my daughters, who were teenagers at the time, had POA memberships. So when they were, quote, 16 years old, they already had memberships. Now that they are in late 20s and early 30s and are married and have children of their own, now they can't use the facilities that they could have used when they were much younger, even if I paid to have a guest operator for them. I don't use myself strictly as the only example, because I'm not doing this just for me, but my example, I think, is kind of representative. I often take my grandchildren to the playgrounds and the beaches. When I've been there, I've often encountered other grandparents, and in one case, I think it was the great uncle and a great aunt of the people who were there. It just kind of occurred to me that our children, under the current rules, my daughters, for example, couldn't take our grandchildren there unless I happened to be there with them under the current rules, which seemed a little strange to me, even though they could have gone to those facilities years ago when they were my dependents. Another issue raised at Ken sent was the issue of enforceability, and yet the enforceability is exactly the same under my proposal as is with the current procedure. Because in the current procedure, someone would show their POA card if they were using such a facility and were asked to show it. Under my proposal, a guest operator or a guest member would show the guest membership pass in exactly the same situation that a current owner or a dependent would show. And the third statement that Ken sent, I don't quite understand, and he said, there doesn't appear to be an issue with not allowing guest operators onto these areas without membership now. And I don't quite know what that means, because clearly the rules say that a guest operator is not allowed to use those facilities, and yet this sort of implies that, well, maybe that rule isn't enforced. I don't quite know what that means. So my suggestion, again, is that people who are guest operators be also allowed to be guest members in terms of using the common facilities like playgrounds and beaches for themselves and or their children, who would often be the grandchildren of the current owners who are here.
To address the last point about there's no opposition currently to the guest operators not having, I think the meaning of that statement was there doesn't seem to be a lot of complaint about guest operators not having access to the common grounds from the discussion previously. So I think that, I remember that part.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys.
Because I didn't know quite what that meant either.
Yeah,
when it came
yeah,
to
if that makes
saying
sense.
it.
We don't get a lot of complaints. I don't think the office gets a lot of complaints about guest members not being able to access the common areas, beaches, campgrounds, whatever, wherever they want to go. I don't think that there's been a lot of people.
But that would also suggest that it wouldn't be a major change if such a rule proposal that I had suggested would happen. It wouldn't affect a lot of people, but it seemed like some people who would have guest operator privileges would then have the chance to be at those facilities and or take their children to those facilities without the owner of a property present.
You refer to, Phil, guest operators. I assume what you're saying is that once you pay the
Correct.
the $200 fee.
Correct.
So for example, you pay $200, and how many cards are issued for that $200, Lois?
One.
Just one.
One, so therefore, it's either in your son's name or your, excuse me, your son-in-law's name or your daughter-in-law's name. Is that correct?
Yes.
So therefore, one of those two parties would be present.
Correct. So my example again, my daughter, who used to be a dependent and used the facilities and drove boats on the lake at that time, has married a guy who was in the military, was gone for several years, has moved back to the area. And so I certainly would like for her to be a guest operator this coming year. but it just kind of occurred to me as strange that she couldn't take her daughters, my granddaughters, to a playground unless I was also present, which just seemed a little strange to me in terms of the use of facilities.
I guess what Ken's point was, it already exists today. People who are guest operators who have that guest operator's card do use common facilities.
No,
No.
No.
In fact, you clearly stated in the rule book that that does not include use of common facilities, it
what
only
he's
includes
saying, what
operation
Ken
of
was
the
saying
lake.
is that the POA has not gotten any complaints about the fact that those people that can use boats cannot use common property. That's what he was
So that's a
saying.
practical matter, we're not enforcing.
Just to come back to
I don't
Phil.
know, Lois, if, you know, maybe it's unfair, but off the top of your head, would you know how many guest operators we've issued?
I don't know, probably 25 or so per year,
Just 25?
yes. And the person takes the test to make sure they understand the rules,
Right.
but it does just pertain to driving the boat.
I guess one of the things that came up, and I think we had a discussion about this last week, one of the things that came up was the logic of a 16-year-old being in charge of an owner's boat with the family on the boat. Once he's gone away from the boat and gone away from the family's house, with other 16-year-olds or other juveniles, if you will, that subject came up as a concern. Now he's in common areas, or she is in common areas with other people that are younger. I think,
But the current situation is, when I was here early on, both of my daughters had POA cards because they were my dependents. So at that point, they could go to the commons areas by themselves or with guests legally. So what I'm suggesting doesn't affect that at all for the younger children who are already having POA cards. I'm talking about people who are post-college, in marriage, emancipated and beyond, having that same right again that they had when they were much younger automatically under the current rules. And if I can quote the one statement here, it says, this is a quote on page 6 of the revised rule book. It says, the guest operator permit only applies to lake access boating privileges. It does not grant access to other common amenities, such as pool, beaches, activity center, etc. And that's what I'm proposing that might be changed. I'd also point out that people who rent properties around the lake already have access to the common areas, but not the lake. And this $200 per
Actually, no, they
No,
don't.
they don't.
They don't? I thought that was the rule that was adopted. Okay, I stand corrected.
They don't get membership cards,
Oh,
so.
I know that, but I thought that was a decision that was made by a board a couple of years ago.
No.
Okay.
no,
The only way that that could be allowed is if the property owner transfers over
Oh, okay.
their rights to the renter,
All right.
Membership.
Then I stand corrected.
their membership, thank you.
Okay, I remember that discussion at a board meeting, yes.
so,
So it's probably not a major issue. It probably doesn't affect a lot of people. I see very little downside. I don't think the concerns that were expressed there were really valid in terms of what's actually allowed under the current system and what would be the modifications of my proposal. But that's what I would suggest.
Paul?
I'm trying to understand. So, your explanation of your daughter living in your house
Right.
was able to use those,
Sure. She had a POA card just the same as I had a POA card.
but a 16-year-old that takes a test to drive a
A
boat,
16-year-old would still be a member of the household who would have that card automatically. They wouldn't be taking a test to drive a boat.
We haven't given licenses to any 16-year-olds
okay,
that I know of.
okay. So the people that are getting the licenses are
Adults.
ex-members of families, but now they've become older and they're not part of that particular
Exactly. No
property.
longer dependents,
Okay,
college graduates, married.
Son-in-laws,
Have their own children.
daughter-in-laws.
We have a lot of that, remember, there is a way around it. I mean, you can put them on your deed, and then they have to pay the 200, whatever lake dues you got, they pay that and they get their own card because they're a member of the lake, because they're on their deed. We've had several people do that.
Mhm. How many quitclaim deeds did I do? 15 or 20 that I did that, had bunches of names to them? But I explained to every one of those people, there's a primary owner, there's a secondary owner, and a secondary owner, and a secondary. Primary owner has a vote, he pays $250 for the property, every secondary owner pays $250, and they get a card, but it's labeled as a secondary card, correct, Lois?
Non-voting members.
And we have several. I mean, there's some that's got as many as 4 or 5, you know? And they all pay their dues, and they get their card.
It seems like a rather extreme measure to retitle the property that we own, just to have somebody have access to taking their children to the beach.
Yeah, you just go change the names on the deed, is all you do, I believe.
The quitclaim.
It's a quitclaim deed.
Well, I think we're getting into some real estate laws there, because when you put people on your deed, you're putting people on your deed.
Yeah.
And families change, as you well know, over the years, and sometimes, well, they just change. And sometimes there's problems, and when a problem is on your deed, I think that would be a way to eliminate that. However, there are other people that I know have bought lots just to put people on those deeds, and that would solve the problem. But again, I guess you have a discussable issue. I think it's discussable. I think it's something that we can discuss, and
Do we want to talk about it at the December board meeting and vote on whether we want that change or not?
I would. I think it's an important thing. I would not put my children on my deed. I bought on property. I don't want them having my house.
I wouldn't put my children on my deed
You're one
either.
argument away from just bedlam.
I don't think can be many things that happen over the course of 1 year, let alone 10 years,
Yeah.
with your kids and their husbands and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, they're on your deeds, and it's just like, how many names do you put on a trust? One. So,
All right, so we can put this on new business A for the December board meeting.
now, so as we put that on new business A for the December board meeting, we are gonna, as a board, have a discussion. If it does not come to a vote, are we gonna open that discussion up to the public at
Sure.
the board meeting?
Sure, it could be open for
I mean,
discussion.
I think something like this might, go ahead.
It would be useful if we had specific language that we would be voting on,
Yeah,
so we could include it in this document for next year.
I think the handout that I gave to the board the last time would basically capture the proposal that I was.
As long as we got that, we know what we're voting on.
Well, I like Paul's idea, the board discusses it and actually opens it up to the members who may show up at the next board meeting, and then we end up not voting on it until after the first.
Well, I think it's gonna become pertinent, not to put it off, I think it's gonna become pertinent before the warm weather. And so, I guess, I have had a lot of issues that I've had on this board, or not just this board, but previous boards, where the people in the community would like to have a say. And I think that particular issue, I'd like to hear maybe some alternatives. I don't know. I think your idea is a good idea. I mean, I'd like to have my daughters to be able to do what you, instead of my wife or myself having to go,
Exactly.
150 yards to the beach with the grandkids, I could sit home and start dinner while my daughter's down there with the grandkids. I think it's a good point.
Well, and then you also have to consider the peak of summer when you've got everybody's families and friends coming out here. Everybody's gonna want a guest operator license, and it could really get out of control quickly too, so we
Well,
gotta
that's
keep
the
that
other
in
side of it.
consideration as well.
Mhm.
Because it's busy out here during peak season already.
Mhm.
And then they have a bunch more people running around with cards that may or may not be legit. I mean, could really grow the community a lot as far as use of the facility.
Sure.
It's not a bad thing, but gotta be able to maintain that too.
And I think those are all the things we need to think about before we vote it in. I mean, I think it's pertinent, I think it's discussable, but I haven't heard all the sides yet. And I think somebody's gonna come up with some other points that I'm not
Yeah, for sure.
privy to.
Okay. So it's a new business A for the December board meeting. And again, Phil, if you have specific wording that you want from a proposed motion maybe, regarding specific people that.
You have the handout that I brought to the board the last time.
I probably have it in here
I
somewhere,
can
yeah. Did it
provide
have
that.
specific language on it?
I will look, but it basically was fairly specific, yes.
Okay, I'll reach out to you if I can, if I want you to resend it. Cool.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It just sounds to me like you got two things. You got guest operator and then you got access to the community. I mean, I have 6 kids. I can't imagine putting all 6 of them on my deed. And by the same token, I can't imagine putting all 6 of them at $250 a head. Because I know who's gonna pay that.
Well,
It ain't
well,
gonna be them.
then each one of them has a guest card, and then each one of them has 6 kids of their own. So that's 36 extra people running around, right?
I could see something more like access to the, paying a fee, and they have access to the facilities to be able to use. Because you brought up a good point, you know how many grandkids I got? I got the 14th coming pretty soon. You know, I mean, they went to the playgrounds right by our house, and it's like Kathy or I, if we're getting dinner ready, they wanna go and use the playground, one of us has gotta go up, so, so
Then you get
it
out
might
to
be
dinner.
an opportunity for a different fee as well, not just,
Yeah.
cause I'll tell you right now, I've got one son-in-law I can trust to drive my boat, but the other one, forget it, so. And I don't care what test he's gotta pass.
There should be a lot of good discussion around this.
I think it's a really good thing to bring up.
Hopefully we'll have a good turnout at that meeting, and hear some different
I
perspectives and
I would
experiences.
also go back to the first thing that I said, the most crowded facility we have is the lake itself.
Yeah.
The beach and the playgrounds are rarely overcrowded. So what I'm talking about is just allowing some access to facilities that aren't crowded right now. And in fact, it might, as I said in my original statement, it might even have the hidden benefit of having some people off the lake using other facilities instead. Thank you.
Tom?
No, I just think, as you stated, Phil, guest operators, and as John said, people aren't gonna spend that $200 for 6 individuals. So therefore, I think the discussion would probably go more about, not having to pay the fee or something like that, and then,
Or a different fee, just for common ground use,
Yes.
or something like that. I mean,
Something like
there's
the
different
school
ways.
pass.
Yeah,
Yeah, like a day pass for the beach or something,
Yeah.
right? So, all right, lots of opportunities for good discussion.
Now, people can go to the pool without their
What's
parents,
that?
Right.
right?
You have to have a pass,
They pay the money,
pay the money and they go.
And
So
the
it's
kids,
something
the
similar.
kids can go to the pool without me.
or
We can't
me.
go to the playground.
All right, so new business A, so that'll be a good discussion at the December board.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda, the user fees for 2020. At the November board meeting, we reviewed the 11 fee increases and a potential credit card fee to be imposed. That passed the first motion for approval and needs to go on the December board agenda as old business B. Is there any other discussion you guys want to have on that tonight?
We've done some research on the credit card usage for the lake and the price or the cost of that credit credit card usage for the lake. Originally, when we discussed this in the office and in the board meeting, the idea was to charge 3% for assessments and boat fees. Through the discussion and the research with the banks on what it costs us to take care of the credit card fees, there's another proposal that instead of charging, again, the boat owners to take the brunt for everything else, and of course the assessments, which brings everybody into the pot, which is nice. The subject has come up for all credit card usage at Heritage Lake be charged 1%, everything, rather than charging 3% for the assessments and boat.
So assessments and boat fees are our highest fees, right?
Correct.
So a 3% charge on those presumably give us more revenue than a 1% charge on everything?
That's one thing we didn't
How
look
can you
at,
tell?
did we?
What would be more?
Yeah, we didn't look at that. We might look at that before the next meeting, and if in fact it's not that big of a deal, if in fact we find, Deborah, that she has a good point there.
Just see if you can get some numbers on that, just so we have something to compare.
We can compare the two, absolutely.
If you can separate
That's easy.
out what boat fees and
That's easy.
assessment fees.
We can do that easily, right? Debbie,
Mhm.
is that correct? So we have somewhere a tally of everything except for, we have a tally of the boat fees. We have it for credit cards?
It's not just for, boat fees, because everything is inclusive on the credit card that's ran. So you have boat fees, you have
Pop.
flags, you have pop, you have candy, you have ice cream. So
Right.
you have all that on there, but we know how many boats that we've registered, motorized and non-motorized.
So we would assume that people, we're gonna make an assumption of how many of those pay with credit cards and how many of them pay with check or cash?
I can fairly
What would
quickly
you
go
assume?
through and see, yeah, I could,
The majority of everything is credit card.
Okay,
yeah, majority is.
And it's credit card for sure, or it's people that use debit cards? Can you tell
It's
the difference
credit.
when you run it?
On our machine, unless it won't.
Everything runs credit?
It just runs credit.
That runs debit too, remember?
Yeah,
They make you put your number in.
yeah.
Some of them are debit.
Yeah,
And
I
we
know I
get
use
quite a few
it.
cash.
Because that would be different, because there's no fee for a debit card.
Mhm.
Right. So see between now and the next board meeting, if we can figure out a way to separate out or calculate what the potential revenue would be if it's a 3% flat charge, for, assume 75% of the fees are paid with credit card. I mean, as long as you do it the same percentage. For boat fees and assessments, find out what 3% of that total is. So that would be the revenue that we would get from that, and 3% of whatever all the other purchases made by credit card would be. So we would know if it's just a 1% across, would you give us more revenue, or just standard?
The data we looked at was about equal between the office and the marina on usage of cards, period. Because you can't distinguish, it tells us how many MasterCards, how many Visas, and so on. But the thing we were discussing was trying to get away from picking one or two fees to go that 3% against, and just to eliminate
And that's cool,
confusion.
it's cool as long as it doesn't garner us less revenue by doing that, right?
yeah, that's the point. That's the only point we're trying to make here, Deborah. Our reasoning for going to 1% for everyone was more, I think it was more geared towards
Sharing the
fairness.
pain, yeah.
The fairness. So if 1% is going to bring us in $1,000, but 3% of the assessments and boat fees are gonna bring us in $2,000, then we might stay with the 3%. The number one thing we want to accomplish is we want to pay the fees that we are charged. And
Yes.
then-
Right, so it's
and
not
then-
building
that's
revenue,
correct,
it's
that's correct.
recouping.
We're not paying people to
Expense.
use their credit card.
Which, if I recall, it was something like $12,500 in the budget line item.
That's correct.
Credit card
Yeah,
fees,
pretty
right?
close.
Mhm.
That's pretty close.
Yeah,
I know, we take two credit cards that are worth, one's 1.7 and one's 1.9. That's what.
this isn't even close, so don't even, I mean, we were surprised when we went through and we had the bank, we had the bank confer with us that this is what you're being charged, and we know what we're being charged. And the percentage is really a lot smaller than I thought it was. However, it comes up obviously $12,000, and we need to get that
Yeah.
recouped. So we'll go ahead and do that.
So that'll be
I'll
a business
work with
meeting,
you.
and bring those numbers.
Sure.
If you can share that with the board before the meeting, so we have time to kind of get our heads around it before we bring it up for the vote. If we want to adjust the motion, that'll be a good time to do it. Just
Yeah, really, the goal is to, in effect, recoup
Yes,
the approximately $12,500.
cover the
That's the goal.
expense, yep.
To cover that expense, that's our only goal. So I mean, whatever is reported back, I guess what we want to make sure is that whatever we come up with covers the expense.
Got it.
And we do have an idea of what the expense was for 2019,
Yeah, we.
correct?
We know.
Because I presume that if
We
nothing
know by the
else,
pennies.
I presume the bank could give you that amount to the penny.
It's 12
It
something.
has.
12,500, it was the
12
current
something,
budget.
right.
Yep.
So therefore, whatever we come up with, the arithmetic has to come out that we balance that.
Yep.
That's what we
Try
want to
to.
accomplish.
Yeah.
Is it historically always been the same?
I would assume.
Probably somewhere, probably
Probably
close.
close.
I think with the proliferation of credit card points and all that stuff, it's more attractive. I know I personally think about that
Yeah.
when I make that purchase, and the size of these tickets, 300, what are our assessments?
249.
249,
249, and what's a boat?
250 was.
Those are huge average ticket prices,
Yeah.
which drives the fee per transaction down.
Yeah.
It actually distorts the small ticket. So
And then again, you think about gassing up your boat, using your credit card for that multiple times a
Those are
year
all
too,
big.
so that's a
But that's
fee
not
that we
included
wouldn't
in
have.
this.
That's a fee you're gonna lose because
Yeah,
we don't charge the 3%.
Yeah.
That's how the discussion started.
yeah.
We
Yep.
saw a lot more being purchased out here with credit cards that we're not going to recoup. So basically, all these people that are paying 3% for assessments and 3% for boat fees are helping the guy filling up his boat, which is usually me at $250 a pop, which I
Take
love.
one for the team, Paul.
So it's self-serving, so let's take it, it's out of hand, reject it, make it 4%.
Correct me if I'm wrong, my
Well,
understanding was it was all the fees.
No,
that
it's
we
just
were-
those two.
No,
No, it's just
Assessment.
assessments and boat
fees. We're gonna
permits.
be a 3% charge.
I'd be with it.
Cause I thought the discussion was any fees we were gonna do were gonna be that anything other than what they buy as far as merchandise.
I'd
Or
be with
Paul's
that.
Gas at the marina was gonna be charged the fee, the credit card fee.
Well, you know, I mean, the fees are not as high as gas usage. Now, the other thing too is, I don't even want to get into it. Let's just
It'll be a
do what we're
discussion at the
doing
board
and we'll have a
meeting. Yeah,
discussion.
yeah.
I will say this, you know, I think as the new marina opens, and there's gonna be a lot of new accounting going on. And gas usage right now is, you know, whatever it is.
135,000.
Yeah, and that includes the gas that the POA pays for.
Yeah.
For-
No,
For the trucks and,
No.
no? Okay.
Okay, old business B. Next item, 2019 budget addendum. Another budget item that was approved by first vote in the November board meeting. Any other discussion on that before we add it to the December board meeting? It was pretty straightforward, and that budget addendum was to account for the extra funding for the marina in 2019, so we could display where that money came from, how much it was in the year of 2019. So that will be old business C. Everybody good with that? Okay. Marina Spending Authority. Again, that was the budgeting for the 2020 year to show the marina construction expenses. So that was approved by first vote. Any other discussion on that? So that'll go up for second vote as old business D. Next item on the agenda, Country Mark Fuel and Equipment. Paul
Okay,
Forbes.
real quick, I've been approached by Country Mark, which is part of Co-Alliance. They would like to come to a board meeting and approach us concerning the following items: building a relationship, selling the lake fuel and packaged lubricants, competitive pricing, upgrading the fuel pump to a modern unit with credit card capabilities, provide turnkey service to get pump installed and operational at a minimal cost, brand the pump with Co-Alliance and Country Mark information. So basically, they're gonna come and give us a pitch on, and I have no idea what the prices are. I've just been approached. One of the people that represents Country Mark and Co-Alliance is a neighbor of ours out here at the lake, and he approached me via email. So I think probably the way I look at it is it's a groundbreaker to give us some intelligence on what's gonna happen with a new pump that takes credit cards and how we might get into that. It may be we go back to the original people that are now selling us fuel and see if that's possible. I don't know where it's gonna lie, but I think, can we invite them to the board meeting, give us a pitch, and go from there?
Discussion?
Is it possible or is it inappropriate to have both vendors come and do it? Is that inappropriate?
Both
I don't know
vendors?
who the other vendor would be.
Yeah, who's the other vendor?
Whoever sells us gas now.
I think
don't
Gas oil.
Who?
Gas Oil, GOSS.
Can they upgrade our pump? Can they upgrade our pump?
Eyes closed.
I don't know.
I don't think it's inappropriate for them both to present to the board, but I don't want them here at the same time, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
I think we would want them here individually.
I'm not sure. I think
Doesn't-
we could probably call the people we're dealing with right now and see what their capabilities are.
Mhm.
You have their number?
I do.
Okay, I'll call.
We could also have Speedway. We could have, what's the company that's around here all over the place?
BP?
Little bitty places.
Rickers,
Those little
Casey's.
Casey's,
Okay.
places like that. Now, we'd have to make that contact separate because of Ken's relationship with them, but we could do that as a board. I mean, what,
Yeah,
What
get
would
a
be
bunch
wrong?
of different quotes,
Well,
find out what.
but these people are basically making an in-kind gift to us of, let's say, 18,000 for the pump. And if we could get somebody else to do that and give us 20,000 towards the marina or 10,000 towards the marina.
Unless anybody else at this table knows more about this than I do, I think it was, I'm just looking for an introduction from these people to start the ball rolling. Because if somebody's gonna improve his pump and it costs money, and if somebody's gonna make it credit card efficient and it costs money, and they're gonna do that, they're gonna get their money back somehow. So we just have to hear what's going on. And I think we begin by having this one, since they approach us, let them come to the board meeting, give us a spiel, we can ask them questions. How long is our contract with you? How are we tied to you? How can we get out of it if we don't like you? All those questions.
Yep.
That's what I'm
Yep.
trying to set up here. So that in the future, if I'm gonna go to 5 different other companies to see who can be competitive in this particular voyage with the pumps, then these guys are gonna give us some groundwork, give us some information, so we're more intelligent about it.
Absolutely. It's a
Okay.
perfect opportunity,
All right.
perfect time.
When they come, if they could put a cost on the pump, you know, instead of minimum cost, if they could say, okay, pump's gonna cost $1,000.
I'm assuming, I will definitely bring that up to them, I'm assuming that they'll come down, and we'll give you a price later. I really, I will, I'll bring it up to you.
Could I interject one little note?
Sure.
In 2002, when I started the marina, we had Co-op Alliance delivering the gas. And Dave was the driver. Things went along pretty good. A couple of years after I got there, we had a busy weekend and ran out of gas, and Dave was on vacation. He had given me the name of his sub-driver that was gonna do his deliveries, and the driver did not show up and deliver gas, so we were out of gas.
Well,
was on
I'll
the
tell you
Sunday.
what, Lois,
So just make
are you
sure
gonna be at the board meeting?
I will be.
You will be able to ask the guy
So we
questions.
would ask like about service contracts, you know.
Absolutely,
turnaround
and you're
times,
not the
stuff like
first person that has a complaint with Co-Alliance.
Okay.
that. That's why we
A
should.
lot of big companies have complaints, and that's well written, and we put the guy in the spot and say, hey, what do you think? You know, we call him
Shop
on
it around,
Saturday,
this is our
we got
chance, right?
1,500 boats out here, where you gonna tell us you're on vacation?
Yes.
You may have to be here twice
Yeah,
one day.
We
Can we do a
haven't had
bidding
any
war?
trouble out of Gossamer.
all right,
Okay.
All right,
thanks, Lois.
so let's put that as new business. Well, do we want to do it at the board meeting, or do we want to have them come in at an ops meeting?
That's for you guys to decide.
I would think ops meeting would be appropriate.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's not a voting issue, I mean, just to have a discussion.
I'll schedule it for the next op meeting.
All right.
You know, I guess I'm a little confused here as far as the discretion between ops meetings and boards meetings.
The ops meetings,
Executive meetings.
the ops meetings are for discussion and for assignment of items to the board agenda for voting purposes.
Right,
for
but
follow-up.
But when somebody comes and makes a presentation at the ops meeting, these people are not supposed to talk at the ops meetings. These people are supposed to listen, and they get their information, and then they come to the board meeting, and they're more educated, if you will, for that board meeting because they came to the ops meeting, but they're not really supposed to talk.
Right.
So if a guy comes in and makes a presentation at an ops meeting, we don't have any participation. I'm just bringing that up. I don't care one way or the other, whether they're gonna present it to us as an ops meeting. Are we gonna have all the right questions as a board for these people? That's just a thought.
I think the more people out there to ask questions of anything, the better will be.
I mean, we can start off with it at the ops meeting and see if the board can handle it, and we come with all of our questions. In the meantime, between now and the next ops meeting, I would suggest all the board members find out what you can to know about what this
Yep.
particular vendor is all about. There are people that don't like this particular vendor, and there are probably people that don't like the vendor we have. So I would suggest between now and the next ops meeting, you ask questions, and we'll try it at the ops meeting.
Yep, okay. All right. Next item on the agenda, HLCS direction on communication. Rick Miller.
Hi. I came here to basically ask you to correct a problem that is going on in the name of the HLPOA. And I've got a lot of things to offer as alternatives, but let's talk about the problem a little bit, just to help you understand what I'm talking about. I don't know how familiar you are with Facebook, but on Facebook, there are a number of groups out there that are Heritage Lake related, that a lot of people look at those groups daily. But two of them are, one is the Heritage Lake Property Owner Association Group. And today there are 367 members of that group. And then another one is a new one that I started up soon after I volunteered to take over HLCS, and it's just called HLCS News. And we have 353 members today. It's not a competition, but I mentioned the numbers just to help you understand how close we are in size and reach to the general membership. In fact, I think the biggest difference between the membership of the two Facebook news groups is I screen the membership of our group very, very carefully, and I know that all 353 members are residents, property owners of the lake. And I know for a fact that I can't say that about the HLPOA site. But that's not the problem. The problem is, after I published the November issue of the Heritage Lake Highlights, I was really disillusioned, disappointed, and more than a little bit upset, because I looked on the HLPOA site the very next day, and most of the articles that I published, I gathered, I published in the newsletter were posted on the HLPOA website. And that's just not fair. It's not fair to me because I did the work to put them in here, to distribute them, multiple different mediums that I think most of you are aware of I'm working on. But it's also not fair to the advertisers. These people pay for our existence. The HLCS, you know, we spend almost $10,000 a year just for a copy machine. That our advertisers pay for that. That's the only way we're surviving. And then we have advertisers in the highlights that's part of that revenue stream. And if you just give away the articles and readers don't even have a chance of seeing the advertisers, that's not fair to them. It's not fair to me, you know. But I'm offering something as an alternative. I'm not just asking you to put a stop to that practice. I'm giving you an alternative if you'll take it. In the HLCS news group, what I've already started doing is as soon as this Heritage Highlights is ready for printing, I post it online. And then I share that news and a link to that newsletter on HLCS News. And I wouldn't object. In fact, I would even help do it if I had the access privileges to do so. I would even post that same link on the HLPOA news group. Because, you know, it's a free document and we can share it freely, but I wouldn't share the articles, I wouldn't share a copy because I want people to at least page through it and see the advertisers. They don't have to do business with them, but they paid for that presence. So I don't want to ignore them. So I'm offering to help you make sure that the communications that are important to the Heritage Lake community get out there. But I don't want to do it in a way that's unfair to the people either producing the material or to the advertisers that are sponsoring it. So I'm looking for your help. The practice that the news group called Heritage Lake Property Owner Association is doing today is cut and paste out of these documents and post it on their site. And that's just not right.
Who does that?
That's the,
Is that Mary Patruzzi?
I
Yes.
think it's,
Is she
Is that
acting as a
Mary Ellen?
citizen or?
Pardon me?
No, she basically, when she came to the board, a few years back, and this was all part of the long-range plan, trying to get open communication. She volunteered to take over that website. One of the things that was favorable to the POA, was that we had control over the information that's being posted on there. So in other words, it wasn't posted, no information was being posted that would be soliciting, you know, advertisers. Basically, it was just a copy and paste of articles, and she was instructed you could put any article on the website that appears in the highlights. And this has been going on, you know, Harold and I have been doing this for 3+ years. freely letting her do that. And what we thought was important is the understanding with Mary that the only information that would be put there would be information that was already published in the highlights. No advertisement, no soliciting, I'm a realtor and this is my business, etc. So that was one of the benefits of having Mary Petruzzi do this under that particular Facebook identity. The one thing that I see with Heritage Lake Community Services, they are not, that's a separate entity, that's a separate corporation. We do not have any control over the information that they put out.
Legally, that's true.
You agree that that's true?
Legally, that's true.
Well, bottom line, that's what we fall back on,
Yeah.
legality.
So is
So
there?
are you
is
saying
there a-
that that would be a commercialization of our site if we allowed him to do that?
As a matter of practice, the only valid reason I think that's a good idea to keep that separation is because then that allows Heritage Lake Community Services to be or operate as a legitimate news vehicle. Without that, then it's just a POA vehicle. So, but I think in actual practice, over the years with Harold and in the brief time I've been here, I think you can see we like to be closely associated with the POA. That's our identity. We have no reason to abuse that relationship, but in fact, we have a lot of reasons not to.
Rick, is there a differentiation between the proprietary rights of some of the content of the newsletter and other content of the newsletter, like the board reports
No.
and things like that? I mean,
No, there's very little today, okay, I plan to change that, but there's very little today in the Heritage Highlights that is not common interest news, either supplied by people on the board or people from the clubs, or, the source of our information is basically Heritage Lake related. And so, regardless though, what is being done with the HLPOA news group is, it's a copy and paste. And so when I get these articles from whatever source, we put them into the highlights. That's a creative effort in many cases. We don't just cut and paste into the newsletter, although sometimes we can, but it's not always the case. And so, so my point is not that Heritage Lake POA shouldn't have access to what's in that newsletter. My point is, let me help you publish the newsletter in its entirety and not cherry pick like we've been doing for so long.
But I think, not to interrupt, are you finished?
I'm just trying to respond.
Go ahead, continue.
No, I'm just trying to respond as the questions come up, so.
I think, having multiple avenues of communication is very important. And I think currently the site that, to distinguish it, the site that is run by Mary Petruzzi under our guidance basically publishes items, even though I don't look at it, publishes items on the garden club that are copy and paste, the book club that are copy and paste, events that are taking place that are copy and paste. But again, it's just another vehicle to get that information out, and it's a vehicle that we have control over.
So can't we combine it, can't we let Rick, would she be opposed? I would think she would not be opposed. It would be maybe easier for her if he just copy and paste the whole damn thing on her with advertisers that pay to be part of the pilot.
Then I think it gets away from what I would call just information about activities that are taking place at Heritage Lake, and that is really a duplication of the effort. Right now, Rick is putting it out in a booklet format, and he still is putting out currently in the printed format. And I think those two vehicles give the advertisers plenty of exposure. I think the little bit of copy and paste that Mary Petruzzi is doing is not detrimental to any advertisers. And let's say this, in the last 3+ years that I've been associated with the highlights, we haven't heard any feedback from advertisers negatively regarding the Mary Petruzzi site. If I could, it's not called Mary Petruzzi site, but
I understand that. What's your take on that?
Well, my opinion is, it is 100% duplicate information. It is that at the very least. And if you're going to allow Mary or someone, whoever is happening to administer that news group, if you're going to allow them to post the same articles that you're giving to me, then why bother giving them to me?
Is that a threat?
No, it's just a question.
Just want to clarify that.
So we've got the HLCS Facebook page, right? So
Yes.
that's got the entirety of the newsletter every month. You can go every single month, pick the one you want, read it, whatever. Mary Petruzzi's site seems very sporadic as far as how often or how frequently she posts.
I agree with that.
And it comes in like just in a dump, like once a month or however often it is. And it's almost to the point where it's almost counterproductive because there's too much at one time instead of like a steady drip. Now, I think perhaps a compromise would be Mary Petruzzi maybe doesn't just copy and paste all the highlight stuff, but maybe she focuses on some of the other news that comes out in the form of our websites or our email blasts or the events. I mean, it doesn't have to be a copy and paste from highlights if it's an event that's coming up or something like that. I don't know. I sympathize with your position, Rick, because you're right. I mean, you're putting out this newsletter and it's being duplicated in a different Facebook page. And at the end of the day, we really don't have the authority to stop any of the Facebook pages because they're pretty much independently run.
Well, I am making an honest attempt to keep the value of everything that the HLCS has done before I ever arrived. But I'm trying to add value to it. And with the HLCS news group as an example, when I see an email come out from Ken Rozelle or from the POA that's newsworthy, I don't wait for the newsletter to come out. I'll share it on my news group. I'll share it with other news groups because, you know, I just know how powerful reaching 1,500 to 2,000 people with one posting it can be. And so I help get the news out. That's what I see my role as now. And the newsletter is just one of those formats. So I'm trying to add value, not just be adversarial with somebody that's trying to do similar but questionably good job.
Well, I think you're still getting going. I mean, you made a ton of changes, made improvements in at least the electronic versions of everything, and I think it's been well received so far. And you're very consistent in how frequently you're posting to your Facebook page. And again, it comes back down to the Heritage page, Mary's page, where it's not. I mean, you say that we have control over the content, but we really don't, because
We don't.
do we go to her and ask her to publish anything or
really.
post anything?
We don't have an
well,
ad.
then let's simply ask her to take it down.
Well, here,
Maybe,
Period.
maybe.
Period. And I mean, give up control of what's, then the only control we still have existing is what comes off of our HLPOA website. We have
Rick,
control
how
of
would you
that.
feel about that, if we just told her to knock it off?
Well, that's one alternative. That satisfies my request. I got no complaints.
I tell you, anybody that has looked at your work product since you started, that doesn't like it, is not paying attention.
Thank you.
You've done a very good job.
Thank you.
and I think originally, one of the reasons why we wanted control for that particular Facebook, if you will, Mary Petruzzi's, was because,
Chatter was out of control at the time.
well, yes, plus the fact, I think some of us thought, are we really gonna give a realtor?
Yeah, there was some
carte
suspicion about
blanche of, and so we said, we're gonna want control of it because we didn't want to see a vendor out at Heritage Lake you know, basically saying, you know, I got all the news for you, so you gotta use me as your realtor. We wanted to stay away from that type of thing, or as a petroleum vendor. So I don't think it's accomplishing anything. Our backing should be with Rick and the new.
Well, if it's just a copy and paste of what Rick is already providing, then we're really not getting a whole lot more
Exactly.
benefit. How about I reach out to Mary?
And ask her to take it down. But again, to go to Paul's point, what we're doing is we're giving HLCS as the vendor then. So you're.
That's right.
Exactly. So you're saying, well, we're not giving it to a realtor, we're not giving it to a gasoline company. Okay, we're giving it to HLCS.
But you do still have control.
We
No, we
still
don't.
submit, we still submit articles
Because
to
you
Rick for
submit articles
publish.
to me, you don't give me the article.
What if we don't like an article in HLCS?
That's
Well, I
too
think
bad.
that, you know who the editor is.
Well,
Yeah, but you could turn against board objectives, you can do anything you wanted to do.
But you can also, at any time, choose not to give us articles. That's our life, that's our blood, we can't function without Heritage Lake property owners.
And our rent arrangement with you is pretty good.
It is very good.
Right, right.
So, I
This
think
sounds
you
like
still have a
Chicago.
good.
This is Chicago, this is Chicago.
I think-
Tom, I think our conundrum is bluntly, by allowing him to post the actual thing for the advertisers, increases his reach, which justifies his opportunity to increase advertising rates over time, which enhances their revenue in an environment where we're not charging rent, as opposed to having Mary just grab stuff out and dump it in there, which is poaching, as I see it. Because it's, now, a lot of the product is coming from our people writing stuff, but he's editing it. And
Yeah, no, he does have the freedom to edit it, to do
I almost
anything.
think
That's
shutting
right
it down
on
is a
the,
bad
But all
idea.
that's
Mary's-
right on the page, the inside page.
Right.
That kind of freedom, that's what the HLCS Corporation has.
But all Mary was doing was copying what that content already was.
Then
There
let's
was no
reach out to
thing.
her and ask her to take it down,
Right.
I think that might be the,
period.
it's not perfect.
And then give
because
it
won't
over
give
to
Rick a chance to
HLCS for any kind of,
Expand his reach.
any kind of, gains that HLCS will take. I just am uncomfortable from it because
I got
we
it,
lose control.
I got that.
And,
We
you
didn't
know,
have control in the other place though, so.
But I-
yes, we
but I
did.
would reiterate,
She did curtail what she did post when we brought it to her attention that this is the only source. If it appears in the highlights, you could use it. If it comes out from HLPOA website, you could use it. That's the two sources that we gave her. Now, as I say, I don't follow it on Facebook, but I don't believe she has broken those sources.
Not since we spanked her.
Well,
Right, I
not,
agree.
just that we told her our concerns.
Right.
Just like I'm voicing my concern for HLCS future, because I don't know what it's gonna hold. I don't know what changes will take place. I don't know which paths will be going on. All I know is what it had been for the 4 or 5 years I was associated with it.
I think there is a concern there. I mean, there's always a concern.
you still have the ability to withhold from me or from HLCS, I
So
should
we
say.
don't have the ability to dictate, we don't, if you, for instance, if you get on your high horse, you don't like a majority of the board, and you get on your high horse that you're gonna change things in this neighborhood without being a board member, an elected board member, you're not an elected person. Neither am I, now that I think about it. But anyway. But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So down the road, if you become a tyrant and you wanna change things in the neighborhood with your pen, you have the right to do it, and we don't have a right to stop you.
And to Tom's point, it verifies that inside the front cover of the highlights, there's one or two sentences that confirms that. But I wasn't there when HLCS was set up. I think Ben might have been. But
He was there when he
it was
signed the
set
charter.
up, so it could be editorially separate. Now, has that ever been a problem till now? I don't think so. Do I intend for it to be a problem? I assure you no. But, yeah, that editorial freedom is what makes us separate.
Well, that's a good subject for our lawyers.
Well, I see your point, I do see your point 100%, Rick, but I don't think as a board, we're gonna be able to police Facebook. There's nothing to say any Facebook page out there can't cut and paste, take a highlight and just take a snapshot of it and put it on Facebook. I haven't seen a lot of that.
I wouldn't use it with the POA or Mary Petruzzi, but I would use a copyright against someone else doing it. We are copyrighted.
So, I mean, that's the statement. So if you feel that Mary Petruzzi is causing an issue, then let's reach out to her and ask her to take down, that Facebook page. I don't think she would object to it personally, because it's just more work for her.
Yeah.
But
And I think if you
with the
understand
full
the reason we're
knowledge,
doing
with the full knowledge that when you do that, you're then putting up the Heritage, whatever, it's HLCS Facebook page.
it,
That is copyrighted, HLCS, and its articles, and its information, and whatever direction it takes in the future.
And, we make this decision now. It doesn't mean that we can't approach it again in the future if an issue does come up. If we decide, you know what, the board should have its own Facebook page, and then we can totally control what the board and information is out to the community. I mean,
We do that right now with the Heritage Lake website.
anybody that wants to watch us are looking at us.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, I'll reach out to Mary.
I don't know why they would ever want to do that, but
Bottom line for me
I
is
appreciate what
want
Mary
to
has
be-
done, because she filled a gap that we had for a couple of years, when we had really no other option, so I appreciate what she's put into it.
Well,
And I
I
think
want
it's at a time now
HLCS
we
to
can-
be your communication vehicle.
Yeah, I just.
And more. I
I
want
ju-
it to be more. I want to plug in North Putnam schools. I want to plug in sports teams and such things, but at least your communication vehicle.
I just think you have to have why we are asking her to take it down. I don't have an answer to that, why we would be asking her to take it down. The only thing we would be asking her to take it down would be to benefit HLCS
No,
at this juncture.
No.
because I believe it's
so.
redundant information, and it comes out so sporadically that it's just not productive. It's information that came out like a month ago, all in one day. We've got like 20 snapshots of stuff.
And I would be in favor of giving more attention to the highlights, because people advertise in the highlights. And to eliminate her Facebook thing would give more attention to the highlights. If people are gonna now go to him before they go to her. I don't think her Facebook thing is really that, like you said, she's probably gonna be doing flips now that she doesn't have to do it. She'll be happy.
I'm just saying, so we understand the reason we're doing it. I don't know if it's duplication of effort, because there's a lot of outdated material floating around on the internet, we all know that. And things get changed sporadically on the internet, so we all know that, so there's nothing different than that. I think we just have to realize why we would be asking her to eliminate it.
Okay. Good discussion. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
I have a motion.
We don't have a motion in the ops meeting. Hang on. I got a couple.
You could have a motion to adjourn.
That's
No,
what I'm talking about.
no, not yet. Not yet. Let me just make a note here, and then I got one more thing to talk about. So, one thing I want to talk to you guys about is the next, operations meeting is on December 30th. Rough time of the year, everybody's got holiday plans probably, family in town and whatnot. I believe last year, we voted to forego the December operations meeting and submit any January board items for discussion and on that agenda through email correspondence between ourselves. We can have a discussion at the next December board meeting if you wanna have a formal vote on whether or not to have the December ops meeting, or we can just talk about it now. I know AJ and Grant aren't here, but. What are
I
you guys'
don't know how
thoughts?
they'll vote.
Yeah, I'm sure too.
Do we have to vote on it? Or can we just say?
We could just agree.
I just won't be here.
Agree to, well, there's one other person that won't be here.
So is the next ops meeting gonna be January, and anything we discuss for the January board meeting will just be through emails?
Yeah,
Okay.
but just make sure you include the rest of the board on your email if you have an agenda item.
Is the next ops meeting in January gonna be the 27th?
Whatever the last Monday of January is. So if that's too
That would
long
be
to have
the-
your,
No, it's not.
if that's too long to have your fuel equipment
Absolutely
guy come
not.
in,
No.
we could do it at the January board meeting.
It's not.
Okay, cool,
I don't see it as a rush item.
okay.
You?
No.
Good.
So you guys good with skipping the January,
Uh-huh.
December ops meeting?
I'll invite him to the January ops meeting.
Cool. Good, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other business, guys? If not, I'll take a motion.
Motion.
Second, we can't vote.
Have a good holiday, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy it with your family and friends, and see you back here at the December board meeting. Thanks, guys. Anybody have anything for executive? Maybe kind of?
Something else discussed, right? We don't have to have a formal meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Comment on the fuel. Obviously, be sure any vendor you talk to can supply the fuel. Not all of them do. I know BP does, Shell does, Sunoco does. I don't know beyond that, but I know those do. The question is, do we pay